So welcome to Hunterdon Art Museum, everyone. My name's Donna DeVille. I'm the Director of Education and Community Engagement. And over here is Kate Mahoney, the Education Coordinator. And we are so pleased to welcome you here for our annual Artists for Art's Sake professional development. And as you know, we're able to, or maybe you don't, offer these workshops due to the generosity of the Hunterdon County Cultural and Heritage Commission. We are happy to say that these kind of events support our mission, which is to engage people with contemporary art, craft, and design in ways that educate, challenge, and inspire. We have a history of collaborating with art educators and other professionals to offer meaningful workshops that we hope will support your work in the classroom and as a practicing artist. And with that, I want to also invite you, we are really wanting to ramp up our collaborations with schools and start getting more art classes to come back to the museum and do visits and programs with us. So please feel free, and I hope that you will reach out to me to coordinate those types of experiences for your students. So I'm just going to give you a really brief overview of the current exhibitions because you're going to be walking around. It is our 70th anniversary this year, so it's a really special year for the Hunterdon Art Museum. We'll start with the first floor. We have Marcia Goldberg and Andrew Zimmerman taking shape. That was curated by Mary Birmingham. And while these two artists work in different mediums, they share a sensibility in their exploration of color, shape, and space, creating visually seductive surfaces that invite the eye to linger. And on the second floor here, we have Philip Adams, which you can see all around you. He did this show called Leave No Trace, and also the mural outside, Wild Ride, which you can see the time-lapse video here of his creation of that piece, and that was special for the anniversary year. Adams explores ideas related to nature and our impulses to control, reshape, and even destroy the landscapes and environments we steward. As the romantic grandeur of these landscapes and atmospheres evoke a sense of beauty and terror, they are recontextualized into moments of levity. And then in this room here, our river gallery is Aaron Kim, Over the Paper Plane. Through her work, Kim aims to express the topic of emotions outwardly by attempting to describe a various range of psychological states existing in our environment with visual formation of colors and form. These ceramic sculptures reveal the abstracted version of her interiority. And then lastly, on the third floor, for those of you who were here last year, you'll remember that's our annual members exhibition. Each year, HAM has a juried show of members' work in which one artist is selected for a solo show. So if you're a member of the museum, you can submit your work for the show. And then this year's juror, who was Juno Zago, an artist and the creative director at Galleria Furrow in Newark, he chose Teresa Shields for her piece Seedbed as the winner of the Member Highlight Solo Exhibition. So whoever gets first prize gets a solo exhibition in the River Gallery the next year. And Janine Pennell won the Hunterdon Art Museum Award for her work Blue and Yellow Monster Costume. Now let me introduce our facilitators for today's workshop, Angela McCula and Suzanne Loricella. They have spent much time working together to bring you a dynamic and insightful program that we hope will inform your approach to teaching art in the classroom. Angela McCula. Angie is a Penn State alum with a master's degree in education from the College of New Jersey. She's taught every age group from preschool to high school, the majority of which has taken place in Hunterdon, Bergen, and Mercer counties. In 2018, she received the Fulbright Distinguished Award in Teaching, which granted her a 6-month fellowship at the University of London's Institute of Education. While there, she developed resources for teachers to use in addressing the unprecedented number of students struggling with anxiety and depression. Upon her return to the U.S., she joined her colleagues in establishing a mindfulness practice and a mindfulness garden at Delaware Township School. As a recipient of the 2020 to 2021 Hunterdon County Teacher of the Year Award, she continues to network with teachers throughout New Jersey who share her enthusiasm for education. And Suzanne Loricella. Suzanne is an illustrator, fine artist, and art educator. She received her BFA from Moore College of Art and Design and worked as an illustrator in Philadelphia, later returning to Moore to complete her art education degree. Suzanne has over 28 years of experience in education and has worked in several different school districts in grades K through 8, as well as programs for high school students at the Hunterdon Art Museum and Mercer County Community College Summer Program. Her education career has focused on inspiring students to use their art to give back through service learning projects such as empty bowl dinners, as well as large sculptural installations. Recently, she has transformed her art program at Clinton Public School from a discipline-based approach to a choice-based program, Teaching for Artistic Behavior, TAB. So you have two very experienced facilitators today. Thank you.
Good morning and welcome, everyone. We're so glad that you could join us here today. We want to give you kind of an overview of what to expect. We're going to begin with a discussion about what TAB is. And from there, we are going to get a chance to try creating our own TAB experience, both from the perspective of a teacher planning it out for your classroom, and then in the afternoon, you're going to be the student that would be in your classroom, and you're going to try out your own lesson idea in a choice-based setting up on the top floor, which is always the most fun, right? We're going to get our hands dirty. We're going to play with lots of different materials. So that's just an overview of what we're going to be doing today. So today's topic is going to be a discussion about choice. And the idea is to kind of think about what kind of choice you offer in your art room. And this is a spectrum that kind of shows a decade's worth of pedagogies and kind of where we might have begun. I know Suzanne and I, we've been teaching now for over 25 years. Yeah, I've been friends for many years. And when you take a look at the spectrum, she and I both kind of started from that discipline-based art education foundation, right? Which was more product-oriented. You know, you introduce an objective of where you want the kids to get to, and you show them through art history, and criticism, and then they get the studio process, and hopefully all come to a nice work of art that could be hung and appreciated, right? And it moves all the way through. As the choices get greater, we're into project-based learning, Montessori, the Genius Hour. I don't know if that's something that, I know in my school, Genius Hour was popular last year as a place for kids to choose. Waldorf, NCCAS, which I'm less familiar with actually, and then the TAB method. So take a moment right now and think where you might fall on that spectrum. So this is a conversation Suzanne and I have been having for the last couple years. We've been sharing, kind of commiserating really, about what it's like. We both teach pre-K through 8, and for over 25 years, it's been, teaching often 6 different grade levels in one day, 2 minutes between. You're rushing. First, you have to have all those materials ready to go to whip it out, to put it in place, right? And then the kids just keep coming through, new idea, new presentation on the board. And it's not self-sustaining if you want to have any, emotional well-being as a teacher. It's difficult. I know you know what I'm talking about. So Suzanne and I started looking for other methods, other ways that could be honestly easier on us as art teachers, and just looking for something new to bring to our room.
More rewarding for our students.
Yeah, more rewarding for our students. And so we paid a visit to some art teachers in the area in the Flemington School District. We went to Flemington Raritan Intermediate, And we also went to JP Case, and we watched what some of the teachers were doing over there. And it was teaching for artistic behavior and a lot more choice. And it rang pretty true to us as like the next path that could keep us excited, and interested, and possibly save us from emotional breakdown of continuing the craziness of teaching 10 different grades with one prep a day. So that's why we wanted to talk to you. I want to share what teaching for artistic behavior is, and also how it might differ from a choice-based art education. So teaching for artistic behavior is less product-oriented, and it's more focused on the actual process of art making and infusing an artist's habits and behaviors in a real studio. And it focuses on critical thinking and problem solving and all the things that could then be extremely useful to them in all curricular areas. So right now, I know at my school, I have the only room in the school where the kids come, and they are the leaders in their own educational path. I have spent a lot of years trying to find ways of bringing mindfulness into my classroom, of helping them to become more resilient. And I don't know if you guys have noticed this, but especially since COVID, there's not a lot of resiliency. There's not a lot of self-motivation. I was struggling with seeing how many kids kind of are very insular and struggling with anxiety and depression. And since I started with the Teaching for Artistic Behavior method and offering choice, I have learned so much more about my students because I have to get to know them through their interests because that's the path they're taking in their learning. And it also has had me set up my room in ways where students can work in a social group with one another or off in some quieter areas. I'll tell you, some of my students who have struggled the most with anxiety and meltdowns are now, I see those are the students that often gravitate toward a little section of the room I set up where they can choose to work on their own in the calming mindfulness station, and they'll sit for the full period just working on their own ideas. And it's been wonderful for that. So instead of trying to have them match what all the other kids are doing and do it just as well as they're doing when it's just one project that they're all doing, they get to self-express, right? They get to work on what they want to work on emotionally and through their own skills they want to build. It has been a easy way to bring differentiation into the room. It's inherently differentiated. They come in, they start where they're comfortable, they start with where they want to start, and then we help them stretch and flex, and we teach them how to move through their ideas. They come with the idea, and they move through stations and concepts, and we also, I have them working in teams, ART teams, artistic reflection teams, so that they have groups of 3 or 4 that meet every couple of weeks, and they share what they're currently working on and what their intention is next. And they help each other out. So they're working in teams. Sometimes they're even the teachers in the room. Sometimes they're the learners for each other. So it's been a really great way for differentiation. Did you want to add anything to that?
Well, it helps a lot with my students that struggle with their self-confidence in their artwork. Some kids will gravitate towards clay and others will like to build, and there's not this pressure, this weighted pressure that my art has to look just like the person's next to it. It just brings the temperature down in the classroom, and in my room, it's like 100% engagement all the time through all the age levels. My youngest ones are my most enthusiastic students. They come in ready to go, whether they've already working on something, they want to continue. So I have kids bringing in stuff from home. I've got this idea and I want to try this. So, you know, when you walk in my room, everybody is working. Everybody is busy and involved, which is really nice to see.
Right. And in differentiating with abilities, let me see if this link works here. I do have like a pre-assessment. So for example, with this, I hand out right at the beginning a drawing pre-assessment. So can they do some of these basic things of, and this is middle school, finding, creating a value scale and proportions of the human body, just some of the very basics. And then I collect these back from them. And this way I can pull them back in small groups. If I say, everyone who I've circled, shading for, come and meet me at the small group. Some of them are fine with it, but then I can really see, okay, these 5 kids, they still don't have the concept of the value scale and how to create it with a graphite pencil. So I'll do small group while the others continue to work on the project of their choice. All right,
So for teaching for artistic behavior, there's basically a 3-sentence curriculum, and you can apply it to anything you're working on. So what do artists do? The child is the artist, and the art room is the child's studio. And they focus on these studio habits of mind. So these are the things that I'm working with every time the kids come in the room. Are we envisioning our idea? Are we observing? Are we bringing in different cultures and understanding different art worlds? Are we reflecting on our art? Are we engaging and persisting? How many times do they wrinkle up the paper and throw it out? Like, how do you get that student to just take it to the next level? We're developing our craft, we're practicing different techniques and skills, and then how can we apply that to what we're learning about? How to stretch and explore new ideas. You get those students that are stuck. I have a student that's been making trains since he was like kindergarten, So how can we take this idea and take it to, can you do a sculpture? Can you incorporate woodworking into your piece? Like how, printmaking, linoleum cuts. How can you take this love of trains that has sustained you since kindergarten and then turn it into something different? How can you get your student to take their love, their interest, and take it to the next level? So these are just a few examples of artistic behaviors, things that I might focus my lesson on, like artists tell stories, or artists observe is a big one in my room. Reflection, artists take risks. Artists work with what they are given, Kindergarten, we're going to do a sculpture today. Here's a bunch of stuff, wires, foam, like what can you do with the materials that you were given? And sometimes I work with themes. Portrait, these are basic themes that I like to work with: non-representational, nature, imagination, the object, landscape. And you get such a huge range of examples in just within these small categories. You get a huge range of different types of work. So a lot of times when I start, before I just don't open all my centers as a big free-for-all. I start one center at a time, and there's no right or wrong way to do this. Everybody has what's comfortable to them. So for instance, I usually start with drawing, and I go through observational skills with them. We do value skills. We work in charcoal and practice building values in a sphere and using the kneaded eraser to take away highlights. When we do painting, we're doing color theory, different brush techniques, monochromatic, wet into wet. So I'm doing these I call them like little mini boot camps, and we all are going through them so that we know how to use the materials, what they're capable of, and then the students are expected to apply them somehow into their art. That's how I feel. So for me, when I start, I do these little lessons before I go into and just open up the center for them. And there's different anchor charts around my room. I have a huge cardboard and sculpture section, and I might have something like this where the students can see different ways to attach things without necessarily tape and glue. Different ways to manipulate your paper to get a sculptural effect. So I do have these out so students, as they're coming up to take their materials, they can say, oh, I really want to do something like that. Or, oh, this is really cool. I'm going to try attaching something that way.
I've used QR codes around my room. So, for example, in the fiber station, I would have a QR code so that I am not having to go and teach individual lessons for all their interests, but instead, they just go over with one of the 6 iPads I have in the room. They go ahead, click on the QR code, and there's a lesson they can follow. And that's been pretty popular in the room.
So this is my classroom. It looked very different before I moved into this type of teaching. All my materials were on the shelves and untouchable to students. It was for me to kind of divvy out as I wanted. So I spent a huge part of my summer just revamping the entire classroom. I pushed all my tables together and made big community seating areas. I have a carpeted area for when my little kids come. We sit, we talk, we look at pictures. I created this little kind of quiet space. We call it the rainbow room because there's like rainbow curtains, but the kids titled it that. So it's a spot for kids to go and sit and be quiet by themselves with a friend. I have teachers that come in sometimes. I want to sit back there. I have special lighting. So I'm not always using the overhead fluorescence just to create like this ambience. I have a Promethean board now, so I have always like music, and sometimes you get those really cool imagery through YouTube videos and music and stuff for like fall or holidays, and the kids love it. I just try to create this like Zen zone, so it's just peaceful when you come in, because that's how I want my kids to feel when they're making art. It's just a place to be calm and express themselves, relax from the rest of their day. So I have different centers. I emptied all my shelves out, and I did color-coded bins because that's just how I am. But I labeled everything. Everything's got a spot. It's all organized, so the kids have access, and they're expected to keep it clean. And they're really pretty good about it. Sometimes, like yesterday, after I was out here setting up, I came in at the end of the day, and like there was all the colored pencils were in the wrong bin. So, I try to keep everything organized so the kids can just find what they need and access it when they want to.
But you can probably see here that a lot of the work to transition your room into this kind of a setting, it's a lot of upfront work. Like, it's a lot of labeling. You have to be and that's a big thing. Kids have to know exactly where to find everything, right? Everything has to be labeled. But then once you've done that, you really can step back and let them manage it. And that's the big part of this. Learn how to take care of a studio is a big part of it.
Yeah, being an artist too. You have to set up your space. You have to clean up your space. You have to know how to, organize yourself. And that's what I want my students to come away with as well. And honestly, it was a lot of work, but I loved every second of it, planning it and like being creative with the colors and the setup and, oh, maybe I can do this and example. Like, I had so much fun because it was very creative to set up my classroom this way. And before I even jumped into all of this, I started really small the year prior, and I just set up a little collage area, and I taught the kids, even like my little kindergartners, how to go up, how to get what you need, how to put it back, how you can, and I did a little bit of a drawing center too, and they loved it. They were going crazy over it, and they were able to do it and go up and get what they needed and put it back. And I even collected like all these big plastic animals and things because I wanted kids to observe and look and draw. I thought, oh my God, my kindergartners are going to just play. No, they grabbed a little snake out, and they went over and they took color paper and they cut out, and they were making what they saw. And it was just, I could just feel it. So I was very excited going into changing my room. So this is a close-up of the rainbow room. I bought lights like off of Facebook somewhere. Just trying to make like a cozy little spot. And here you can see all the kids working together as a big community of artists.
So for me, one of the scariest things was giving access to all the materials in my room at the same time. Just always said it sounded terrifying to me. I wasn't sure I was ready to do it, but have been surprised that my room is actually cleaner now than it's ever been at this point of the year. It's been more organized, and that is because I assign students to being captains of each of the spaces. So they oversee, even if they're not working in the painting area, they're the painting station captain. So they watch and see who's working in the painting area so that when it's time for cleanup, they know to make sure that they have cleaned up after themselves at the painting station. And at the very end, they all stand by their station and they do the thumbs up for the station captain of captains, which isn't me. It's still another student who's in charge of all the captains, and they let their captain know the room is ready. So it's all self-managed, and they really love taking ownership of their part in the studio, in cleaning the studio and running their studio. So that's one thing that I have that's been a really great addition. And when the kids walk into the room at the very beginning, I have which stations are open, which stations are closed. They all have a number, so they put their number in these spaces. This says how many kids could work right at that station. And so they can move their tabs, their numbers around to the different stations as they move. But they also seem to like that management aspect of it. I'm going to go here now, and then they go over to their station and they bring their work with them to keep going. That's been really effective. And I do have this available to you. All these slides and the resources will be available to you. You can click on any links if you want to download any of the things that you see here, including this list of all the things to do, down to, timekeeper and everything for room management.
So this is just a variety of student work from first grade up to 8th. Can you maybe identify a common theme between all these different pieces? It's nature, yep. So I've got first grade, we were working in collage and layering pieces. We moved into fiber, how can we cut fiber and create different layers of relief in your work? This is an observational piece. This student, we were working with different pen techniques and mixed media, and this was an 8th grader that wanted to sew her piece together. So there's just a huge variety, things I would never imagine, like as I was preparing these lessons and, asking the kids to do certain types of projects. I'm just blown away by the things that they come up with, much more creative than I could have ever imagined. And this is just more, sometimes kids like to sit and work together. I have these giant rolls of paper, and they just come in and they're creating airplanes, and, well, these guys are doing donuts, but they like to work together. This is an example. I had a theme. It was pop culture, and the student wanted to do clothing. And she did a little clay figurine. Somebody's making their house. Somebody really just wanted to paint a lemon on a record. But it's they're using their imagination. They're bringing their own interest in things that they come to my room with an idea most often. And they're all actively engaged. Some of my students carry a theme, like my student with the train. This student was carving into balsa foam that she pressed into clay. She created cardboard relief. She created a ceiling tile. Beatles. I love Lucy. She's just amazing. Sometimes kids just want to teach a friend. They learn a skill, and other kids are like, that's really cool. How do I do that? And so they're teaching them. I've got this whole thing of puppets going on now. They look like dragon heads, and the kids are just teaching each other how to do it. And then the next day, the more of these keep coming in the room. So, they're learning from each other, and they're teaching each other.
That's been one of the coolest things I've seen is where students who might often be like my friend here, very shy when she was in the lower grades, and often very, very emotional young woman, and has matured to the point where she came with the idea of creating puppets, and now she's writing puppet shows and going into the lower grades and presenting her puppets she made along with her puppet shows. And a lot of the themes of the puppet shows are on how to be a good friend and self-care. And it's really exciting because I've watched it over the years. And opening it up last year for her to be able to pursue puppet making, she also became an influencer in the room. So kids have been flocking over to her, saying, "Oh, show me how you did that. Show me how you did that." So that's really exciting to see her become a leader in the classroom. So confidence has been gained.
And this is just another example of the variety of work I'm getting. You know, I had a student, she had this image she wanted to sew, so her stitching was just, it was crazy. And then she went home and she worked with her grandmother virtually, and she just changed, like, she worked really hard on this piece. So there's just a huge variety. And, you know, I'm not standing up there giving them ideas. They're just generating idea after idea after idea. This is a little video of some of the kids. This is when I first started.
See it in action?
Mm-hmm.
Wait. Mom, are you my note? I put a note in a lot of notes. I wouldn't put it. Where's somebody just Where'd you
So students of all ages, right? So that's just a little snippet of when I was first starting. But you can see how active everybody is. They're all working on something different, but they're all engaged. So I did take a workshop. It was a week-long workshop through Mass Art. It was virtual at the time. I think they're back to in-person. It was amazing. It was all age levels. Like there were elementary teachers, middle school, high school. You could go to different classes and different offerings. You know, how am I assessing my work? How am I doing grading? How am I, getting the art out there? What kind of lessons? It was very interesting. So you could hop on to whatever grade level or whatever subject you wanted. It was 5 days. They created all these Padlets and all this information. It was so informative that I was able to come back the next year and feel a little bit more confident in what I was doing.
I think it's only in person now.
It's only in person,
I tried it
yeah.
for last summer and it was only in person.
It's really, really good. And then I just purchased a bunch of books. I do have them on the bench. They're full of sticky notes because I just pour through them. And I would say, like, I started with this one for elementary and this one more middle school and upper level, more high school. And Ian Sands, who wrote these two, you can find him online. He was part of the workshop. He has like tons of videos of his themes, portrait and, non-objective art and the object and like all this stuff. So, sometimes I do use his videos in my room because they're so like on point. And his whole website, I think he calls it the Studio 9. Very, very good resource. But all the people that are featured in this book were part of that workshop in Mass Art they were presenting. So you can find, there's so much information.
Okay. In your packets, I've just included the Studio Habits of Mind and how it correlates to the National Core Art Standards. I have found it much easier in teaching TAB to meet the core art standards. So I just have that in there for you in case you need to share it with a supervisor or a school board to show, if you are interested in transitioning, how it still meets all the needs. And at your leisure, if you're interested in seeing how I have my students take an assessment at the end, it is something that just kind of goes over the artistic behaviors, asking them to make a statement about their trimester with me, the different artistic behaviors that they met as they were working, problems they solved, and skills that have been built. So I'm not going to go into that right now. That's if you're interested in seeing it. And that's our portion of introducing what TAB is. And please know that you are welcome if you are interested and would like to see how we do it in our own classrooms. It's different. Even the people we observed all did it differently. So please know you're welcome to come and spend some time with us in the room and see what it's like.
How many of you are high school teachers? It's a lot, right? So how many of you think that you could apply some of this, all of this, parts of this into your classroom?
Yeah, that's where we're eager to have you work as an age group team so that you could talk about the specific needs of high school learners. Yeah. So if we take a look at our plan for today, the next plan, we're now going to use the museum as our resource for generating a prompt for our students. And under the TAB philosophy, what you're going to do is if you're walking around, think about you're about to give the kids a prompt. What comes to mind from any of the artists you see throughout the museum that could be an inspiration to them, a springboard to an idea? So as you're talking to your group, you're walking around looking at the themes that are coming about from the artwork you see, think about, is there some common theme you think that would be of interest to your students?
Artistic behavior.
Yeah, go ahead and speak to those.
Yeah, or, are you interested in having your students explore a theme or problem solve or, talk about how art is observed or they reflect? Think about, go through these floors, first floor, second floor, third floor, choose, art. It could be multiple pieces, could be the same artist that you're going to use then as that springboard for creating a plan for what do you want your students to learn, how are you going to apply some of this choice-based idea into your own classroom, how is it going to work for you?
Yeah, and I think it'd be easiest, if you choose one of these as kind of, the back burner for one of the goals that you want to accomplish with the kids. But there's also themes, so perhaps, something like nature or climate change that you're seeing, maybe theme from an artist you think you could put in front of your students to inspire them with an idea. I have two examples. Just in looking at Philip Adams' work in this room, one example might be my group and I might decide we're going to go with the Artists Are Global teaching for artistic behavior. And perhaps it's create art that inspires a call to action around an issue or an event that's meaningful to you. So as Philip Adams is showing us something about how we are drawn to the beauties in our environment, we also are destroying it with these objects, plastic, with all that. So by introducing this artist and then saying, okay, your turn, everyone, let's try a call to action. How would you use the materials to bring attention to an event or an issue? Or perhaps a theme, simply saying, nature's our theme. Perhaps climate change is the theme. So when you're working with your groups and talking about it, find something that might be of interest to the kids and a springboard for creative ideas. right, how's everybody doing in here? Okay, all right. This is one of our studio spaces where all of the materials have been set up, where we have our fiber center, our painting center. We also have drawing and sculpture, each at their own tables, and QR codes so that people can be led toward resources without having to come and just talk to one of the presenters. There's QR codes that could lead to directions. Take a look at what people are doing. Now that we've had a chance to play, experiment, collaborate, or simply find a quiet spot in one of the studios and just go, what we're going to do now is we need to talk about the experience that we just had, other questions or concerns that have come up, things that you discovered you liked, or things that you needed more of, or could be a challenge if you were to bring it back to your own classroom. So this was your chance to be the student, and I saw it in all of your eyes when I said it's time to clean up. Get the stink eye. No. Okay, so what we were hoping to do is we will pull out a piece into the center, and we'd love to hear you speak about the prompt that you came up with. And that prompt could have changed, and that's perfectly fine. You might have realized when you got up there and saw the materials available, you're like, oh, I've got a better prompt for this. So just share the final prompt, the materials that you used, and we want to know how resourceful you were able to be on your own. Did you have to look up a video? Did you use a QR code? Did you turn to a friend and say, I want to try this felting. Can you show me what you did? How did you get better at problem solving your project to get to where you are? And that also goes along with the skill builders. What did you need to already know how to do? And if it was all completely new to you, I would, just mention, I had to learn how to do this. And this is what I would have to do with my kids, is show them a skill builder. And then finally, how did you grow as an artist? And we gave you these sample questions, and picking any one of these 5. Describe a new strategy that you learned today, a new art word that you learned and what it means. Describe a mistake you made and what you learned from it. Explain how you challenged yourself today, or tell something that you noticed. Describe something you noticed and how it helped you solve an art problem. And please, as we present these, let's all keep in mind the goal is not the final product. The goal was the process of how you got there, and hopefully it gave you ideas for what you're going to do next. So hopefully through the process you're like, oh, okay, next time I'm going to, try this, and this would look really neat as a, did it ignite any other ideas? Because that's a lot of what this is about. Did you want to add?
I'm just really curious is if you would take this idea back into your classroom, how would you do it? Because hopefully as you were going through the experience, you were thinking about your own students and your own needs and how you could apply this into what you're doing. So I'm curious to hear, how you could then take this idea or morph it into something different and take it to your own room.
Yeah. So after you present these things, you could even say, I can see this, or I'm still worried about this, and we could group chat that.
So I don't know if everybody can see what we put together. So it's not finished, as per it's not about the final product. I actually can't remember how we ended up coming together on one of our main points of focus, which was emotion for our group. But we started talking about one of the prompts that was listed, that artists tell a story. From that, we ended up talking about emotions, and we wanted to work together as a group. So we each decided to pick our own emotion and try to make it into a visual. Our plan was to then combine each of our works into one. Some of the things that I wrote down here were artists help to tell a story. That took us to emotions, inspiration, identity, and the depth of human experience, which lends itself to layers. One of the things we were trying to incorporate and really showcase, which I don't know if we're there, is a layered effect in our artwork. One of the things that we picked up, I think it was on the next floor upstairs, we each were drawn to a couple different pieces upstairs that were really layered, and they drew us in. So we wanted to try to portray that. We used mixed media across the board. We used YouTube, Pinterest, our brains. We used QR code, experimentation. I used specifically defont.com to try to find a font.
As an artist, do you feel that you could answer any of these that you grew? Did you hit a problem and you figured out how to solve it? Or is there something you learned from this that you could see taking you further into another idea? How did you grow as an artist from this experience? Discoveries through collaboration?
I think for myself, I'm very detail-oriented and plan-based. But then at the same time, I tend to be all over the place. So I think I kind of just went at that and just started to go and see where it took me. But I don't necessarily like the final product of that. So what does that mean I learned? I don't really know.
Okay.
I don't really know.
Did you need more parameters? Like, did you need more of
I feel more comfortable with parameters.
Okay.
But I enjoyed creating without any.
Okay.
So I think maybe finding a balance between those two things is something that I need to work on.
So maybe in doing group work, you tell the group, okay, let's think of the unifying factor that's going to make it all look like it comes together. Is there one thing we can all agree on to unify? Maybe?
Well,
I don't know.
I think we have a unifying idea. I just don't think we had the chance to actually physically put it together.
And not enough time.
Right.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I
Yeah.
think that would have made
Okay.
sense.
Very pretty. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Absolutely.
Wonderful. And it does deserve a round of applause. Yes, as artists, we put ourselves out there, and it's not always easy. There we go.
So we started with simple shapes was our idea. We went downstairs and kind of looked at the paintings with the circles and then the simple shapes of what was hanging on the walls and the sculptures downstairs. So we kind of went with that, and then we thought of Chuck Close or Surratt, and we said, okay, circles, how do they work together? And then we all started separately and said, well, I would like to try this once we got up to the studio. I said, I've never felted. You guys did oil and baby oil? Yeah, so that was something we didn't try. We went with a lot of the QR codes, and we watched a bunch of the videos, and then I don't know how it evolved to us working together. Oh, it was you asked her to draw a hummingbird, and then she was like, oh, I'll draw on yours. And then she said, all right, I'll put mine on yours. And then we all just took everything that we collectively made and started gluing it on so we didn't waste anything. Because at the end we were like, well, I made this thing, but I feel like it's a waste, so let's glue it on. Yeah, so we ended up with that kind of final thought of us all working together. But these pieces, we decided to move up from the bottom because we started with one person had that idea and we just moved it up and down. That's what we did. We used, we looked at the YouTube videos. We looked at Pinterest for some of the pictures. That's pretty much it. We kind of just went at it. I said that what we kind of learned from this was if I had to do it again, I would. I think that was a big part of it, like the process part of it. If I wanted to go back to this and do another one or go from this to improve on this, I know I would put like this part down first. I would glue a paper underneath so we weren't filling in at the end instead of, So forethought, I said, the students, for us, I think I do like a little bit more focus with our students. So I like a project or an idea, but maybe we could do it with here's just use pencil or charcoal or pen and ink. These are all out at once. You could do an idea off of that. Or what did I write down? I also said something like a workshop day for students where they could come in and do this kind of thing where we just put it all out. So maybe it's not all the time for us. We could kind of weave it in and just do a day where, hey, we're going to have fun today. Or we have those 2-hour blocks of testing periods, but we don't actually give tests. So we could have a 2-hour time of this and they would have fun. Something like that.
Yep. Wonderful. Thank you.
Yay!
Yeah. Okay. Have you worked with this material before?
The clay, no.
The paper clay?
No, and I will admit I don't like it.
Okay. That's important.
Coming from somebody who teaches ceramics and uses clay, I found it very difficult to work with because it's really, really different in how it acts to different things. It's the
air dry paper clay.
The air dry paper clay, and I was coiling and I tried to like score and slip things together, and it was iffy at best. And you can see it's all cracked at the top, which I kind of like the aesthetics of, but it was cracked pretty much all the way through. That took a lot of smoothing, so.
Did the scoring and slipping work?
I have no idea. I guess I'll see when it dries. Could end up in pieces still. So my idea my prompt that I came up with when I was walking around is I saw a lot of cool things in the gallery that were like unconventional combinations of things. Like there was a ceramic vessel that had henna-inspired designs on it. Then this artist right in this room did a lot of really detailed painting on her ceramic vessels. And since I teach ceramics, I've been trying to wrap my head around the tab for ceramics-specific class. And I know that some other people were talking about how it might be difficult to bring into classes that only have one material, like a drawing class or a painting class. And definitely in our ceramics classes, we only teach ceramics, but I think that doesn't mean that other things can't be brought in. And so I went the mixed media route, and I like the idea of ceramics drying to something very hard and then like a woven tapestry, which is very soft and very natural. So I combined those two things together. The title is Sweater Weather, because it felt like I was knitting her a sweater while I was making it. But I actually didn't use any resources at all, which is amazing for me because I do rely on them a lot, but it was really fun to just kind of go from my own brain. And I would say growing as an artist, mixed media is not something I do often in my own practice or my classrooms, so I think I'm going to try to emphasize it a little bit more, and being able to spend some time working on it was really enjoyable today.
And it's pretty.
Yeah, why don't, I think it's okay if we want to stand and just sort of look over. It might be kind of fun to see if we could guess your prompt, too.
Okay. Yeah, guess our prompt.
Name that prompt.
Guess what it is. So we walked around this floor a lot, and we were really liking the idea of how the artists in both rooms were combining things that you don't usually see together. So when you isolate them by themselves, so you take those plastic flamingos and you look and you just close your eyes and think about that, you think of something totally different than if you place it in front of the rocks that are falling down. So our idea was that we wanted to take this idea of displacement and how if you take an object and you place it somewhere else, how it changes the meaning, the feeling, the mood that you feel when you're looking at it. Does that make sense? So I guess overall it was displacement, which I think kind of relates to everything that you guys were saying. But then as we were upstairs and looking at all the materials, and we decided as a group that we were going to use the same prompt, but then do it individually. And so as we were sitting there talking, some people were stuck about how to go about that. So we just started brainstorming as a group as to, okay, well, what is displacement and what are some objects that we could use? And I saw the phone in the room, right? So we couldn't figure out where to go with it. And I was like, well, what if we did like a rotary phone or something that is still a thing, but not a lot of people still use it? And so that kind of brought us to this idea of using things that aren't really used today and placing them where you wouldn't really find them. Does that make sense?
So I have a question for like AP high school art class. There was concern about, how do we make the time for the skill building and really learning how to use these materials in a sophisticated way. Do you think that thinking of this tab-like presentation, would that help your students to also be focusing on conceptualization of art, like the concept of art, more
The
idea behind the art?
Generation. Yeah, the first, like the brainstorming part of creating is, I think, what a lot of our kids are struggling with is how do I come up with an idea? How do I keep the idea? How do I persevere and build resiliency when my idea doesn't work? Mm-hmm. And so I think that having the experiments and giving them the opportunity to play with different things helps build resiliency, because when you say it's an experiment or it's play, you're more likely to do it than if you say, oh, here's an assignment. Because the wording just change. Yeah, it's the change of the words, I think, helps make it more fun.
Did you find it harder? What did you find? Was it difficult to do because you are used to creating the lesson plan and following through? Or did you enjoy this process? Did it help you think bigger than you might have if you were asked to recreate something in a realistic manner?
I mean, because we were kind of, I don't need it. We were kind of gathered, trying to figure out exactly what we wanted to do. Oh,
Yeah.
I'm so sorry. Maybe I do need it, sorry. We were trying to figure out exactly what, because, Philip Adams, that's his name, the artist's name, correct?
Yeah.
Obviously gravitating to that idea, and RJ, we kind of threw it on him in a sense where he just started to throw out the words, and we're like, yeah, let's go with it. And I think that took a little bit of time just trying to figure that out. And then once we had the idea and everybody was kind of on board with it, I could speak for myself because I'm even looking at the questions, I don't think I challenged myself. I stuck to what's safe. Because I thought about immediately with okay, doing this with my advanced class for portfolio building, but then I'm looking around and I'm just I could have had more fun. I could have experimented a little bit more. And as I was done and looking at it, I was just kind of all right, well, what could I have done differently? Mm-hmm. So I feel like that's something that my students tend to run into often, where they're, whether they like it, but they're just but am I done? Or they don't like it and then hate it, but then what could they change about it? So I think the idea, and I don't even know if I'm answering the question, but I'm just kind of talking through the process.
No, we just need your thoughts.
I think that putting myself in their position, just trying to kind of work through it, I started to come up with more ideas, but then I started to think oh my gosh, am I going to ruin it? So I think the idea of it never being done and always being able to revise and sort of kind of seeing different aspects and just having fun with it. So
I could see a lot of high school kids having that mentality too, of I'm going to stick with what I'm good at, you know, because I did the same thing as you. I'm I like to draw and paint, I'm going to stick with drawing and painting.
Yeah.
And being them staying inside their comfort box.
And I'm an overthinker to begin with, so it's the number of objects I actually went through, and then I was I'm going to do this, and then that changed 5 times, and then, but.
That's where we have to invite them to fail. Come, let's try this. Let's all fail at it, but let's try it. Because look at what our employers are all begging us as educators now, like the kids are coming out and there's no creative problem solving, there's no resiliency, there's no creative thought in the workforce anymore, right? With the new people coming out looking for jobs, they're not finding the creative people they need. Yeah.
Oh, no. Oh, I was just going to say, it's amazing how, just, I thought the hardest part was coming up with a theme. And then once that started to roll, and especially like once, we got that idea, it's like, all right, well, where do I go with it? And then how do you, obviously time plays a part in the whole thing too, but so what I learned to give my kids a chance to play, and exactly like that. So that's it, yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and I think just because of someone saying what they went with, what they feel most comfortable with. So I don't know, because I'm teaching sculpture, so my brain hasn't looked at like a colored pencil in a long time. So for me walking in, I was like, whoa. So I had a little bit of like the overwhelming, do I go with that or do I grab this or do I grab that and do I want to try that? So my brain kind of went like all over the place. So I could see the materials being put out and having those kids that have the overwhelming, I don't know what I'm doing, and they kind of shut down, because that high school level is it's just a very different mindset where, or they look at all the materials, they try one thing, they try another thing, and I had the block, I had it, and then I sort of just started drawing, so I needed time to really just sit and think. And then I see, other people, they're going, they're fast, they're moving, they're grabbing materials and going. And I'm like, well, then I might be that kid that sits there and just goes, I don't know what to do. And that happens a lot with just materials and things and just stuff out. So that's all. That's what I experienced, I guess, right? And then I got lunch, so.
And there were quite a few of you who,
I gotta go eat, yeah.
right. Quite a few of
Hopefully,
you.
as you're putting these things out for your students, you have taught them how to use them and the possibilities, and get them to stretch beyond their self-imposed limitations. Like, this is what you can do, or that kid that's always stuck doing the same old thing. Okay, well, there is no more markers for you. You need to take this next level. You could, if you like this subject so much, how can you change it and work in a medium? Take a risk. What does that feel like? So.
The invitation to fail.
Yep.
So we did kind of the same thing. We came up with a theme as a group, and then we did individual art pieces. We were thinking about doing a group thing, and then we decided not to. So we came up with our theme pretty quickly after we went to this floor and the floor above us, creating an emphasis with an unexpected object. And then we threw in having to use mixed media as one of our parameters. So for me personally, mine's the one with the sun. I saw the felting stuff and I was like, ooh, I've never done this before. I really want to try it, and I loved it. So I did my whole thing, and then I was like, oops, I didn't do mixed media. I have to add a different aspect. So, excuse me, I put the oil pastel and the baby oil, which was really cool too. We used some of the videos, some of the QR codes that were the felting one and the oil pastel one I used. And I mean, this is the artist we kind of based our theme on. So describe a new strategy you learned today. I learned about felting, and I was kind of thinking, how could I use this with my kids? Because I stabbed myself twice, and I thought maybe it wouldn't be a great thing for middle schoolers. But Suzanne, you said you use it for your art club or your enrichment, so that might be a better idea, how you could bring that in. But I love the oil pastel with the baby oil too. I hope to bring that into my classroom. Do you want to add anything?
Yeah. So my process, I did the Christmas tree and what looks like, it's supposed to be a bird with the oil and the Starry Night kind of swirls. I wanted to do the felting because I've never felted before either, and I started with my bird and it did not come out like I wanted it to. And so I sort of bagged that, and then I did my Christmas tree, which I feel like I didn't challenge myself enough. I was concerned about trying to figure out how to work with that material, And I did too, stab myself.
I've never used the 3-pronged one before, and I stabbed myself.
Yeah.
So I don't use them in school. I use just the needles, and I have a student hold it with the needle, and then we go with another one. So my fingers are, so I stab myself right away. So I'm never going to buy the 3-pronged ones for my kids.
But it is a really cool medium, and I am very excited that I got to work with it. And next time I think I will challenge myself a little more. But I did, the unexpected was the armature wire in there for the Christmas tree ornaments and the star. It was fun. I appreciate the time to play and explore. Yeah. Anyone else in our group?
So mine is the one with the pine cone. And when I first started, I felt kind of like some other people had touched upon, was a little overwhelmed with all the materials and everything. And as I was standing looking at everything, I don't know, I just came upon this pine cone, and I'm like, what an interesting object. I've never used a pine cone, and it just kind of spoke to me. So I grabbed it, and then I thought, let me think what I can do with this. And I was thinking about what we had seen on this floor, an unusual object in a whimsy kind of circumstance, and I thought maybe I could have it like suspended over like these waves or something interesting, kind of like using the theme of nature as well. And the pine cone has this main idea of emphasis. And as I started, then kind of around the pine cone, putting everything together, I enjoyed the process of, the challenging point of I kind of wanted the pine cone suspended over the waves and everything, and problem solving and trying to figure out with the wires and stuff like how to make this work. And through this, I thought of myself and my kids at school experience. How would they come into this? What challenges would they have? Would they persevere through challenges to make their idea come through, or would they just, kind of, give up and start something new? So it was fun and interesting to be in that perspective of my student going through the process and being overwhelmed, but yet then finding an object, that I could have as a starting point for what I wanted to build then around it. And then using that and, going from there and utilizing other elements and other materials to kind of build up on my idea. So I also, in the end, I think I'm quite pleased with it in the end. My pine cone kind of fell over, but if I hold it just right, it'll suspend. But I liked, I was happy that I guess the vision that I kind of had for it came out, good and bad. But I was happy to use the materials. I liked using the little felt stuff, to kind of create that texture of, frothy waves. And I enjoyed the experience, like I said, of just being in the position of what the kids would be feeling with the anticipation and, anxiety of overwhelming material and how to work through it. So.
Mine is on, if we're looking from this way, the bottom left with that silver kind of sun in the center. I was a little bit overwhelmed as to where to start, a little bit lost, and I feel like it never really did click for me. And one of the things we circled was taking a risk, which I very much did not take any risks, which I'm regretting. I wish I had tried something like the felting. I've never done that before. So maybe next time I would push myself to try something new. But I guess I was thinking part of this process is getting the kids more comfortable with failure, not failure, but, things not really, like I'm not happy with that, and that's okay. What did I lose? Nothing, right? There's nothing to lose here. So I guess getting comfortable with that, which I'm not ever, but so it was a good exercise. But I loved the making of the art, so that to me was the value of it. I liked having time for myself and just chatting and reflecting and having time for me, which is very valuable in itself.
I've heard several people talk about the idea of kids starting something and then moving quickly to another thing and not seeing an idea through. And we do see that in the classroom. Every one of my students has a sketchbook. I provided the sketchbook. And I will often do a quick 5-minute prompt And it might be related to the holiday because that's a lot of where their heads are. Like, illustrate a favorite holiday song, right? And it's just a warm-up. It's just to transition them. And I'll also use that sketchbook for them to plot out their ideas. We've created webs. Here's what I love. And then how many different directions can you go from the idea of what you want to pursue, your concept. I also have my students write notes to themselves for next week. This is what I was working on. Next week I want to keep up with this and I want to try adding this to it. So they remember where they were because, 7 days goes by and then they come and start something else. So I have them try to keep notes for their own progress.
So I got here at noon because I went to work. And without Amy, I would still be at work. So I am grateful for that text. So I didn't get to participate in the gallery walks, or I didn't get to spend a ton of time, but I did pop in, and then at noon I went upstairs and saw people working, and I was like, yep, I'm just gonna make. I need to get my hands on something. Today is, someone said it over here, like today is, my time is so valuable, and so I thought about a theme, and I've always wanted to, and not selfishly, just without time, I've always wanted to be my own AP student. I've always wanted to be in their seat and be like, okay. So I, in the last 2 years, have had my inquiry on the whiteboard behind my desk. And the inquiry process is you, as the artist, organize your thoughts into what this question is, and then the body of work all year long will try to answer said question. And so I somehow along the way have become obsessed with Joan of Arc. And it brought me back to, and we've gone to the Met with Art Club, and my favorite piece is at the Met, and it's by, what's his name? I wrote it down. Jules Bastien Lepage, and it's just Joan of Arc. And I saw it when I was probably 16, and every time I go back, I run up, even if I can just walk by it, and I feel like my soul is whole again. And so I didn't really have time to get to know the gallery work here today. So I just went with this nugget in the back of my brain, and the felting was something else that I have 2 felting kits that my mother's given me, and I'm like, yeah, I'll get to it. But now I actually thought I would do it. So I tried to recreate or answer the question in this art theme, what lens would Joan of Arc see through in 2024, or what would be her mission? What would be her calling? And so that allows me, through my body of work, eventually to play with this composition or play with this central figure. So that was my goal today. And in the last 4 minutes, I saw this fantastic bag, and I made eye contact with someone, and you said, yes, cut it. And I was like, yes, I am gonna cut it. And I hot glued it on, and I saw someone else using branches, and I was like, yes, I am gonna use branches. So that was a very freeing moment for me. Yeah, I got to play. So there were some questions I had answered. First time felter, long time caller. I loved the question, tell about something that you noticed today and how it helped you solve problems. Although I also loved just the concept with my Art 3 honors and Art 2, asking them the question, you're a skill builder, and using your own terminology is something that I'd really like to bring into my classroom. As I've gotten away from self-reflections, because I'm just let's just draw, let's just make, let's just play. But I think that this is kind of a reminder to get back into, write it down in your sketchbook, things that you're proud of, just jot it down, or that note to yourself for next week. Other practices, and so it's so delicious to be with other art teachers and steal the terminology back into the room. So that's my making process.
Very nice, thank you.
Thank you.
How are you doing?
Oh, I'll take that.
2:21. Oh, and we're at 4 minutes till 2:30, but I think we could keep going. Ready?
Okay, I'm going to kind of speak on behalf of the group, though. Okay, so when we were walking around, we went on each floor and we tried to follow. We chose, for using an artistic behavior, we chose artists tell stories, and so I'm one of the group. I'm one. and then there's 5 of us. Okay, so we were all students in the same class who got the same prompt, which was create a piece of art that shares a personal narrative. And there was definitely like a feeling from the other teachers that was like, isn't there more? Like, isn't there more instruction? Don't we need more guidelines? And I was like, let's just see. We were like, let's just see what happens when we do that. Kind of like jumping in and not transitioning slowly. So our essential questions ended up kind of being, how does art help us understand the lives of people of different times, places, and cultures? And how does art preserve aspects of life, drawings pulling from the actual standards? And so for me, walking upstairs and seeing all the stations, we didn't set parameters on what we could use. I know that in my classroom, I think I would probably have to say, like, here are 3 main media that we're gonna work with to begin with, and maybe start sprinkling in more as like additional layers as the project had time to develop. Because seeing all of it at one time made me feel like I should be using all of it right from the beginning. And I don't think I had enough of an idea of what I wanted this to be at the end in order to just move forward. The other things that you were asking, as far as reflection goes, I mean, I've never used paper clay before. And I did not score and slip a single thing. I just stuck it all on. That was the better way to do it. I have no idea. I do know that the package said it is going to shrink a little. And so that armature is in there and not coming out. So if it shrinks, it's probably going to crack. So I would probably have to use resources like Google or an experienced art teacher who knows how to use this, asking questions to figure out, like, how do you prevent that from happening?
I wonder if mixing it with a little vinegar. So I don't know, ceramics people, take a piece that's already dry, take some with you, let it dry out, mix it with vinegar, and shove it into the crack if it cracks, because vinegar won't shrink.
Your room must stink.
Yeah, right?
Toothpaste.
That's a good idea.
Toothpaste? Toothpaste and clay together.
Really?
No, I mean, just like you can't.
Oh, you're using it like spackle.
Yeah.
Like
she's
spackle.
using toothpaste like spackle.
Yeah.
It's not like a lasting thing.
Okay.
You know what I mean? But if you glue
It'll smell
something-
minty fresh
like if
instead of vinegary.
If you glue something back together and there's like chunks missing,
Yeah.
I've stuck toothpaste.
Oh, that's a good idea too.
I don't know if it's
Okay, a little fix-its. Okay.
I mean, so the thing is like, I think limiting supplies would be really helpful as far as the stations go. Like, opening up the whole classroom to anything that you possibly have is definitely dangerous, because it makes it so that us as a resource, like the teacher in the room, I don't know how comfortable I am. I don't have iPads, so they'd be bringing their Chromebooks, I guess, to just search the internet, like the whole internet.
Right.
Like, how do you use this? And so I'm not comfortable with that. So I think I would probably limit the materials a little bit more. I do like the idea, like today, we really used the whole building as far as inspiration. We found a common theme about how on each level there was an aspect of storytelling and personal storytelling, and keeping a diary, and that was a neat theme to get us started, which allowed us to all to go in completely separate directions. I don't think they all had to, and like there was no way they were all going to look the same.
Right.
So that was neat.
Well, I just want to see if there's anyone who did not get to speak about their piece that would like to share. Oh, yes, about your piece.
Yeah, so for me, not being an artist, I found the idea process easy, but then the product process difficult and overwhelming. When we went upstairs and I saw those materials, I was like, oh my gosh. And then I was so easily influenced by the teacher in the room. Why don't you try this? So I started with the felt, and I was able to come up with an idea to match it. So the dog is my seeing eye puppy that I raised. So that was my story. And although it looks like a really simple product, I was able to use 4 different colors to create the sable color. And so it really took me a lot of time and I was ready to give up so many times, but I valued the materials and the cost of them. And I don't know that all the students would value that and might give up very easily. So that's when we were talking about the cost of materials and how do you get students to value the cost when, there were so many times I was like, yeah, I stabbed myself 3 times. I broke 2 needles. And I was like, I'm done. But then I was like, no, I have to finish something. So, and I was inspired by the one work upstairs by Kathy Schalk, the tending sheep. And that was just so soft and wonderful. But, all I could get was the face, not the whole body or the picture.
All right, so there were questions still. Yeah.
To the tap and how it works in a room.
Mm-hmm.
So if a student has, you said 3 projects to do for the semester or whatever, however long you have them. So one person is finished. Are they all just working on their own pace? Do you have everything due? Like, all right, you have 4 weeks, something should be done by 4 weeks? Like, how do you manage all these kids?
I used to, when I was in my old way, I had deadlines and graded each project and rubrics to match, but now I'm putting it out there. This is what I want you to work in these parameters, and then, I'd like to see it done here, and then there's kids that are still going, okay, well, you have more time, and now the rest of us, this is what we're moving into next, and then those kids will have to find their way later. And sometimes I have those kids that are so just motivated and detailed that they don't even get to the second one, but they're like doing something else. Or maybe they just can't find their way into that next idea you have, but they have this idea. Go for this idea because it's more meaningful to you, and it's going to be an awesome piece at the end. So I'm, not just, it's just, I like to present my things. So I always create these visuals, and incorporate the artists and different techniques and whatever we're going to be doing to give them a focus. And it just is kind of organic in the way it goes.
But the students did you say the students also put their work into a?
Yeah, so this year I've been trying a Google slideshow for an assessment, and they have to upload their artwork there. They have to describe their artwork, and then there's an artist statement at the end. So I've been looking at that as their final wrap up for the trimester, in addition to their participation.
And for me, it's Artsonia. I'm like, imagine me, I'm sitting on my couch with my cup of coffee Saturday coming up with some more grades, the next grades. I need to see it in your Artsonia portfolio to see how the process has been going. I want to see where that initial idea, where you've taken chances, you've tried a bunch of different ways. I need to see it in the portfolio, whether it takes 3 pieces, whether it takes 6 pieces. I just want to see the progression of your idea.
You have those students that are just generating work after work after work, and it's really amazing. And the other kids are still at that. So this compared to the way I used to teach feels like a little bit more freedom in that. I wasn't having those early finishers. What do I do now? 'Cause they're moving into something they really want to pursue and learn about. So it doesn't feel that frantic lull time where the bad behavior becomes they're already planning their next idea and wanting to move on.
And if you can imagine us taking this variety that's come out of a couple of prompts and putting it in an art show or a display, it's really interesting. It's not like, 15 ways to do a portrait, right? It's like all over. These ideas are all over, which is just an interesting new way of thinking of presenting, I think. I was scared of that. I rely on my art show for support from the public, right? And I was nervous about putting these such different pieces up and, are they going to show enough skill? And it made for a really dynamic show at the end of last year. It wasn't all different ways to do the same thing, the same idea. It was just all over. You could really learn about the kids looking at the art show, right? Or I know whose that is. I know which student did that piece, right? That teachers could recognize the personalities in the pieces. So.
And they're bringing their own interests and their passions in, and that's what you want. You want them to be excited about coming to school and what they're doing and, expressing their own voice in their work.
Do you ever have to give kids more ideas, like almost like.
Mm-hmm. Sometimes you have a student, yeah.
That's why I like when they come in, open up your sketchbook, we're gonna do a 5-minute prompt and we set the timer, and for October we did Inktober, and every day in October is a different word. Could be, yes, some people might have seen those, right? Like, and I tell kids pick out 2, spooky dog, and then they have to come up with an image that incorporates spooky dog. And then when your 5 minutes are done, if you came up with something amazing and you want to keep going, keep going. If not, go continue working on whatever you were doing. So I'm always like chucking another idea out there and seeing if somebody runs with it. And I've got a table of art lessons, my old art lessons. They're all in folders. They really stuck? Go take a look, see if something engages you on Islamic architecture, so I always have stuff.
Sometimes I just take different materials that they haven't used before and just kind of put it next to that kid that's struggling, and then you find them trying something new and different. So there's a lot of ways that you can tackle that. I ask them if they want me to start generating ideas again, and they do not.
Right.
They do not want me forcing them to do anything.
They love the freedom.
Even when I have my 3rd and 4th graders come in, and they're so used to this now, they're bringing their ideas into my class. No, today we're going to try painting. They're like, oh, do we all have to do painting? Well, yes, we're trying temper cakes, watercolors, this, that, the other thing. We're going to experiment with all of them, see what you can do with them, and see what you like and what you don't like, so you know in the future what you might want to choose. And then by the end, they're all doing it. So they don't really want that from me anymore. So it's been an interesting process. It really has. Letting go, relearning everything that I've ever done that I felt that was working, and just letting go and trying something new after so many years, right? Going back to school again. But I feel like my kids are happy. I feel that they're able to think creatively now. I think that they're excited to come. I feel like the environment that they're in my room is hopefully soothing and relaxing, and there's so much going on in their lives that I've just kind of taken my program in another direction.
I'm happier. I'm more invigorated from it personally, and they surprise me every day with ideas.